Hello everyone, it's Brian here with a second vinyl tag in this vinyl tag season. I thought that I would only do one, that being the official or unofficial vinyl tag this year started by David Atkinson, but another one popped up and I thought, this kind of piques my curiosity, so I'll see if I can get something going for this. This is the Canadian Stereotypes vinyl tag 2026 started by Daryl, the northern vinyl guy, and if you know his channel, you know that he lives way north in Ontario. I mean, really extremely north, much farther than I've ever been myself. So, there are polar bears, there's a lack of roads in certain places. Very interesting to live up there, I would imagine. So Daryl came up with this idea based on the I Am Canadian Rant, which comes from an old Molson Canadian beer television commercial. And when he started talking about this, I didn't even remember what he was talking about, but I followed the link that he provided to the YouTube video of the original commercial. And of course, it all came flooding back to me. So it's about this, these stereotypes. And so this guy named Joe goes through a bunch of stereotypes to, contradict them. And at the end, he says, "My name is Joe and I am Canadian." Canadian for being Canadian, but also Canadian. That's the brand of beer that the advertisement was for. So Daryl came up with 16 prompts somehow connected to that original I Am Canadian Rant. So I thought I'm going to take part in this. Now, you don't have to use Canadian artists or bands. You can use whatever you want. But for the purposes of this video, I have chosen all Canadian music. So if you don't like Canadian music, well, maybe you'll like some after this. Who knows? So the first question is possibly the simplest one is, show a folk music or pioneer music album. I don't really even know what a pioneer music album is. I don't have any. I have lots of folk records, but I thought I'd pick something that is a little maybe outside of what most people's conception of folk is, because this record incorporates blues and jazz and rock and country and folk. So I chose the Cowboy Junkies, the Trinity Session from 1988. So this was recorded in the Trinity Church in downtown Toronto without overdubbing, without mixing, without any editing, just live to the recording equipment that was there. And it became a classic, really, a favorite Canadian record for a lot of people. The debut record. I saw this band numerous times around this period because they seemed to be everywhere. So I saw them many, many times, sometimes at little cost. So I just think this is a really interesting record. It has, of course, some cover versions. Most famously would be the cover of Sweet Jane from the Velvet Underground, written by Lou Reed. There's also a Hank Williams song on here, and some others. Let me just pull up the record. This is the latent recordings pressing, which I believe is the first pressing. There was a change made. There was a track substitution, I think, on a later pressing, but this is the original. I mean, it's a very quiet record. It's really a kind of an authentic record, if that makes any sense. I think the mood and the atmosphere in this record are really great. I didn't follow Cowboy Junkies along for the way. I have a couple other things, but then I don't know if I lost interest, just, whatever. But anyway, that's the Cowboy Junkies for folk. Secondly is show an album or song associated with the cold. And I had a number of choices which I thought about, but I decided to go with an album that has a representation of cold on the cover. This is the Rural Alberta Advantage. The record is called Departing from 2011. And I'm wondering if you can make it out. I'll zoom in a little bit here because there is a car going down a blizzardy road, and this is an enduring image of my teenage years growing up in southern Ontario. I can't tell you how many times I drove down roads that looked exactly like that, and it was tens in many cases. Anyway, oddly, this band is not from Alberta. They're from Toronto. They're an indie rock band. This is the whiteout vinyl version, which I will show you. Again, a map of Alberta, even though they're not from Alberta. There's a song in here called Coldest Days, but that's really about a relationship. But it does relate to the cold, I guess, in some ways. And here is the so-called whiteout vinyl. So not bad. Pretty cool looking piece of vinyl, I will say. Anyway, they're an interesting band. I quite like them. I think I have 3 or 4 of their records, something like that. Number 3, show an album by a band or artist named Jimmy, Sally, or Susie, or Tom, Dick, Harry, or Joe. And I chose a record that I think I'm actually getting rid of, but it suits the purposes of this video. This is a record by Jimmy Rankin called Moving East. Now, Jimmy Rankin is a part of the Rankin family. They're a kind of down east musical group, like a family-oriented musical group, you know, obviously because of the Rankin family. This is a solo record. He's done a number of solo records. This came out in 2018. It is country, folky, kind of traditional in a way. It didn't really grab me, but his name is Jimmy. Now, I found this in a thrift store, shop, whatever, and oddly, it's signed and inscribed to some people. So why they didn't keep it, maybe they didn't like it either. So I probably should put it back in a thrift store. There he is. And this is a black vinyl copy with some transit imagery. There's like streetcar tracks or something there. I'm not sure I love the cover of this record either. I mean, it's streetcar tracks and manhole covers. It's kind of strange, but you know, I'll move that along at some point. 4. Show an album about a politician or an album that discusses a political cause. So I've chosen a record that raises a number of political issues, from homelessness, really, from drug use, moral decay, political hypocrisy. What else? Freedom, maybe, because of the title. This is Neil Young's Freedom from 1989. And of course, this record starts out with one version of Freedom and ends with another, one acoustic, one electric. And there are references throughout this record to all those themes, and probably more. Even the title track itself has an oblique reference to George H.W. Bush, because it references a line that he says in a speech, and maybe even a passing reference to the Ayatollah, I believe. Here's the inner sleeve. And reprise. It's an reprise. Here we go. I think this has been reissued, of course. This is an original pressing from '89. All right, Neil Young. All right, next question is, or next prompt is an album that has bilingual lyrics or a song fully in French. I actually almost chose songs fully in French because I have quite a number of them, but I decided to go with the bilingual one. And this, of course, reminds me of the so-called Duolingo Challenge, which I think was started by a guy named Kyle a year, maybe longer ago, in which we had to show songs that had 2 languages in them. And I chose 7 songs that were in French and English, including this one from Daniel Lanois, Acadie. The album's Acadie, and I chose, for that purposes of that video, Jolie Louise. There's actually a couple of tracks on here that have English and French, but this one alternates between English and French throughout the song. It's really well done. His family was from Quebec, and he moved to Hamilton, Ontario at a very young age, where he eventually started Grand Avenue Studios, and he's, of course, produced. Maybe more people know him as a producer of people like Neil Young, U2, Peter Gabriel, Emmylou Harris, I think, one of the Neville brothers. There's a long list. I'm just scratching the surface. And this is a truly fantastic album, which may well be my favorite record from 1989, but you'd never know that if you watched my 1989 album ranking, because I totally forgot about it. Someone in the comments said, oh, this is a really great record from 1989. And I was like, yeah, I completely forgot to include it. So that's Daniel Lanois. Oh, he also produced Willie Nelson, Robbie Robertson, and people like that. Okay, show an album with a boot or other form of footwear on the cover. I mean, the first one I thought of was Ian Jury, but I wanted to stick with Canada. So I picked kind of a fascinating album cover from a band called Max Webster. Now, I mean, there's so much to talk about here, but I mean, first the yellow, tight yellow suit that's off the shoulder there that looks like a modified, speed skating outfit. And then these white cowboy looking boots. Anyway, this is Max Webster's Universal Juveniles at a time when he was really the only original member left. It was almost like a Kim Mitchell solo record at this point, because everyone else had changed over. On the back, we have 3 different views of this fantastic yellow outfit and these white, I guess they're cowboy boots. They look sort of like cowboy boots, but I think they have a zipper up the side. So, I mean, I could never get away with wearing anything like that, I don't think. But anyway, this was a band that were label mates of Rush for a time. And they toured together, so they often opened for Rush. This is on the Anthem, the famous Canadian Anthem label, which had some very interesting bands on it. And I did see Max Webster only once, way back when. And I have seen Kim Mitchell solo a couple times. So for the next question, I mean, it'll be an obvious choice. An album cover that is predominantly red, white, or a combination of the two, or has a maple leaf on it. A lot of Canadian records do have a maple leaf on it at the back, but I wonder if I can find one. No, a lot of them do. So, because I chose Max Webster, I'm going to stick with Rush. As I mentioned, label mates and touring partners. By the way, I forgot to mention, this record features a song called Battle Scar at the end of side 1, which is essentially a duet of Rush and Max Webster. So the two bands together in a studio singing a kind of epic song. Anyway, Hold Your Fire, 1987, pretty much all in red in their synthy period, which I didn't really love. They bring in Amy Mann to do some backing vocals on Time Stands Still. Lyrics. Interesting Rush kind of artwork there. And the label looks like that. There's a bit of dust there. Got to deal with that. And next, a song either about peace, one that promotes peace, or was played for a cause, for example, something like Live Aid. And I went with a very, well, in Canada, famous singer-songwriter, guitarist, folk kind of singer who became a political songwriter, but maybe at the time wasn't so much of one. So this is Bruce Cockburn, Sunwheel Dance from 1971. Now at this time he was singing, I guess, sort of almost pagan songs, or maybe that's not the right description, but songs about just living in love. I mean, that might be completely wrong. I don't know how to interpret those. But on this record, he put one of his earliest political songs called It's Going Down Slow, which is really a plea for against war and maybe a better connection with nature. I mean, it starts off with Go Tell the Sergeant Major to get that thing repaired. They're losing their pawns in Asia. There's slaughter in every square. And then it ends with God damn the hands of glory that hold the bloody firebrand high. Close the book and end the story of how so many men have died. Let the world retain in memory that mighty tongues tell mighty lies. And if mankind must have an enemy, let it be his warlike pride. So Bruce Cockburn. Now, a band or duo that are either biracial, multi-ethnic, or made up of members from multiple countries. This may also include duets. So I chose this kind of obscure band from Canada called Alta Moda, with Molly Johnson there on the cover. So she is a biracial, so her father is from Trinidad, I think a black man from Trinidad. Her mother is American, yet she ended up here. They only did this one record in 1987. The single, I believe, was Julian. I'm not sure how successful it was. And then they never recorded it again, although she recorded music on her own. Pretty interesting record. It's kind of in the funk, jazz, maybe, area, I guess, if that makes sense. On this Current label. Now, the Current had a couple of artists I really loved way back when, which may come up at some point. All right, next one is a song title or lyrics or album cover or band name with a noble or trustworthy animal on it. These may be real or mythical. So I've gone with this really interesting album from Canadian singer-songwriter and former punk band member Art Bergman. This is Late Stage Empire Dementia from 2021, I believe. That's the cover. There he is on the back. He sadly lost his wife a few years back. And as you'll notice, there is a beached whale here. And whales, are sometimes linked with wisdom, longevity, power, maybe protectors even. So that image is a painting that was done, and I wouldn't have known that except I looked here. It says, the cover is The Whale Beach between Scheveningen and Katwijk, I don't know where that is, with elegant sightseers, painted by S.E.S. van de Velde, 1587 to 1630, currently in the public domain. I just always love this. Now, it's unfortunate that I just talked about how whales are long-lived and powerful, and yet it's dead here. So it is a really interesting image. And it's repeated there on the label on one side. Sorry, Bergman. Now, next, an album cover with someone wearing something on their head, or with someone sitting on a couch or a chair. Well, I have both. So here is Bob and Doug McKenzie's Great White North. As you can see, they're wearing toques on their head and they're sitting on something. And not only that, they have a bunch of beer bottles and this Mountie here. This is a pretty fun record. And speaking of Rush, which we just did, Geddy Lee guests on here with the track Takeoff. I don't know. I think this is hilarious. It got played a lot back then. It has their version of the 12 Days of Christmas, so they don't quite make it to 12 days. so these are the original Hosers. You can do. I guess some people probably did this crossword, but I did not. And it is also on, as I recall, we'll find out soon, the Anthem label. Yes, the iconic Anthem label of Canada. So that's Bob and Doug. I think the inner sleeve is falling apart, but kind of a fun record. Okay, now here's one where I had this sort of cheat, because it says show 2 albums in which the band's name or the artist's last name, or if there's a member in the band with that last name, starts with letters A and Z. Now, A is easy. There's lots of bands that start with A, surnames that start with A, but Z was a bit of a challenge. So for the A, I just chose Arcade Fire, Neon Bible for the A. So A for Arcade Fire. And for Z, if I'd done this tag video 35 years ago, I could have shown you something, because I had a record in my collection from a Canadian band called Zon, Z-O-N, who did a couple of records, Back Down to Earth, Astro Projector. There's another one. I think there may be 3, but I don't have it anymore. So I chose an album title that starts with Z. So, there may be a person I'm overlooking. So this is an album by a band called Avec le Solier Sortant de sa Bouche from Montreal, and the album is called Zuberdust. So that'll be my Z. This is on the Constellation record label out of Montreal, my favorite label. It's fantastic. I love pretty much everything they've ever released. There's some inserts here, which are kind of cool. Black vinyl edition, which I won't have to bother showing you. So that's Z. All right. Any song title or song lyric with a Canadian place name, Canadian geographic location, Canadian landform or landform region, or famous Canadian landmark in it. Let's go with an album I showed not that long ago. This is Owen Pallett, also known as Final Fantasy, Has a Good Home. 2005, I think. This is a reissue from 2023. There are 16 songs on here. And one of the tracks is called The CN Tower Belongs to the Dead. I don't really fully understand the song, but it has to do with history and ancestry, I guess, and maybe symbols of Canadianism, because they talk about we the dead, find a country road, led the dead from our houses to the ground. Well, the CN Tower is built upon our bones. The CN Tower will always be our home, blah, blah, blah. Which is interesting. I'm not sure I quite get it, but decorate the base all the graves of our lost loves, cabbages, ginger root, and a crucifix. Anyway, the funny thing is, for me, from the top of the tower, radio buzz in our ears. It's just funny because every FM radio station in Toronto always wanted to have their broadcast location or their antenna at the top of the CN Tower because of the way FM waves work. And secondly, it says we can see your house from here. So that's something I think everyone in Toronto does. They go up there and they're trying to find out if they can see their house. So just a plain black vinyl version of that one. Almost done. An album cover or song that it depicts any Canadian sports team name in it. These team names can be from any major sports league played in Canada, the MLB, NHL, Major League Soccer, the CHL, the NBA, CFL, even the Lacrosse League. So I chose a song that I've talked about before, if you're tired of hearing about it, but from the Tragically Hip's album Fully Completely, there is a song on here called 50 Mission Cap, which is about Bill Barilko, a famous player for the Toronto Maple Leafs who mysteriously disappeared on a fishing trip, but had scored a goal that won the Stanley Cup, the last one they'd won for a while. And there's been a drought. The Leafs haven't won since 1967. But 50 Mission Cap, really, really great song. One of their best known tracks, probably. As I think I said in a different video, the Leafs have a printed or handwritten lyrics hanging in their dressing room, and they use that song for warm-ups, I think. So it mentions the Leafs in the track for sure. All right. Show either the 24th album alphabetically in your collection or an album or song about beer or whiskey. So the 24th album turned out not to be Canadian, so I went with a song that actually isn't about beer and whiskey, but is about drinking. It's from Spirit of the West, their album Save This House. There is one of their most enduring tracks is Home for a Rest on side A there. So they're a West Coast Canadian band, and that track has to do about drinking. They're in the UK, they're just drinking. Their coat sleeves are leaving a shine on the bar. They're talking about... It's just an epic song about drinking, exactly. They don't mention beer, they don't mention whiskey, but a traditional reel called Glass of Beer is somehow incorporated into this song. So I don't really know that original reel, but I'll take it that it's in there. So not quite beer or whiskey, but it has the effect. It's the same effect, really, because it's about drinking. And the label here. By the way, I think this is a hard record to find now. I don't think it's ever been re-released, and the CD is accessible, but I've never seen this record apart from this copy, so that's interesting. And finally, because Canadians are so polite, an apologetic, thankful, or polite song, so I'm going with the album Touch from July Talk, and the middle track on side 2 is called So Sorry, in which someone is apologizing for being for being wrong, I guess, or anyway, interesting band. What are the lyrics of that song? I'm so sorry, I didn't mean it, I'm disappearing, I'm so sorry, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, so kind of like a relationship thing. And it's kind of an interesting band because they have 2 vocalists. Look, a biracial record. The woman, I can't remember her name. You'd think I'd remember. Has a very nice feminine voice, and he has a really gruff kind of masculine voice, like you'd think of Tom Waits or something when you hear him. So an interesting combination. So anyway, that's my effort to complete the Canadian Stereotypes vinyl tag. Thanks for watching once again, and I'll see you in the next video.